September 28th, 2024. Well, before I get into my main topic here, which has to do with the new Russian nuclear doctrine and Zelensky's visit to the UN and meetings with uh, uh, the Biden-Harris administration, and of course with former President Trump, I we'll make a few comments about the general state of the campaign. I just thought it was interesting today. I saw the Kamala Harris trip to the border speech, and I'm just kind of laughing at this. I mean, it's like she's denying reality. I mean, they're talking continuously about how that you know that now that they're going to be really strong on the border when they're the one that opened it up for over 3.5 years. And only when they saw it was becoming a major issue against them in the campaign did they do some executive orders to basically reverse part of what they're doing. And yet they're still bringing a lot of people in semi-covertly with their app where people apply to be flown in. And they're not being counted, by the way. So it's really a travesty. And yet their whole claim is this really bad bill that was negotiated by the Senate side, that supposedly they're saying that Trump's the one that killed it. I think if Trump had remained quiet, it wouldn't have passed either. The House was not at all happy with the content of that bill, which wasn't very good. But anyhow, I just thought that was an amazing, like almost laughable scene with her being, she's now strong on the border or something. But anyhow, we'll just get on to the main topic here. The Russians, Putin has now issued a clarification or modification of the Russian nuclear doctrine, which will essentially, basically it's pretty much modifying it in a direction that's pretty much kind of like what the U.S. nuclear doctrine has been for years, except that at least in their case, they're largely focused on the defense of their own homeland and they're including Belarus in that as an ally. Whereas, of course, we had worldwide alliances in both the Atlantic and the Pacific, which were under our so-called nuclear umbrella, or as the formal technical term is, extended deterrence. Anyhow, so that's what it is. And basically, I don't know if it's going to really lead to any different action we've seen up to now, unless the situation fundamentally changes. He's basically saying that in the event that there was an attack by a conventional power that was allied with a nuclear power that posed a significant threat to their national sovereignty, that they would be free to use nuclear weapons in that scenario and address the situation in which they were to face massive air, cruise missile, or even drone attacks would be the kind of thing that might elicit that sort of situation. So the idea, I think, is the way the groundwork is that don't push it too far. At the same time, I don't think it's a specific threat that they're likely to do anything in the near future, because at the moment it looks to me like they're actually winning the war, at least, and so. It doesn't seem like there would be any case in which something like that were to happen. Now, there have been some discussions along the lines that Ukrainians have been massing troops sometimes around the border of Belarus, and then they moved them, of course, for their surprise attack on Kursk a while back. But and then there's always the question about some of the Baltic states or Poland would do, but I really, again, don't think it's very likely that there will be any offensive launched by them. So I would tend to think that is not a very risky situation in the short term, but it is kind of an escalation, I guess you'd have to say. By the way, if you like these videos, please give me a like. Always looking for more subscriptions, and of course you can click the bell for notifications if you have a YouTube account. And if you have a Rumble account instead, the description of how to get to me is and subscribe there is in the description below. So yeah, so that's kind of the way I see it. I don't think that's an imminent possibility. There have been increasing drone attacks by the Ukrainians, and so that might lead to something. Now, let's get into Zelenskyy and his visit. Well, he basically has been presenting a so-called peace plan, which seems to be maybe more like a war plan. But largely, he thinks that if he's given a lot of weapons and the permission to launch missile attacks into Russia, that would allow him to be in a position to negotiate some kind of a better deal. Again, it's unclear what that would consist of, and so I think that's. It turns out I think he didn't get what he wanted. As near as we can understand at the present, that the U.S. has not authorized these missile attacks that have been discussed, and what we have apparently agreed to give them another weapon package, which will be about $8 billion worth. And it seems like Biden is of the mind that he wants to deliver all this before the possible change in administrations in the event that Trump were to win, which for him that would be a bad thing, and for us that would be a good thing, of course, if Trump were to win. But that essentially is what he's kind of seems to be alluding to. So that's kind of the situation. He's apparently not getting a large shipment of ATACMS missiles, and I don't even know how many Storm Shadows he has. And in fact, I sometimes think that the Russian nuclear doctrine change was more that they're a little bit worried about something else being introduced. There has been discussion of the JASSM missile and particularly the extended range JASSM, which would allow much deeper strikes. And I think that may be the thing that might trigger some stronger Russian reaction. They've pretty much moved a lot of their tactical aircraft bases back outside the practical range of the ATACMS. And and the other thing is that the Storm Shadow pretty much has to be launched from a tactical aircraft to be used. So I think they're primarily using the old Su-24s that Ukraine has, either from their own historic stocks or things they've gotten from Eastern Europe, to make up for for the losses they've had. And these have been upgraded to be able to handle the British Storm Shadow, and there's a French Scalp or something like that. It's basically, I think it's basically the same weapon, but the French version. But since you're only going to be able to launch 2 of these per sortie, that's not really a true game changer, I don't think. And so, and then even then they would face air defenses, and they would face potential. The plane itself might get shot down by air defenses or aircraft. So that. But the large quantities of these other missiles could be an issue. So that's essentially what's kind of at foot. But they've pretty much been turned down for permission to use those. Instead, they're going to get a weapon called the JSOW, which is it's a glide bomb, which I believe comes in multiple warhead versions, kind of a cluster munition type thing, or I believe there may be a unitary version too. I'm not so. At any rate, this supposedly has a range of about 75 miles or something like that, I think it is. So it gives them a little bit more range, maybe a bit more than the Russian glide bombs have. But it's a similar, although the Russians apparently recently have increased the range they can use theirs too. And so that'll be something, but again, those could be used probably from the F-16s, since they would probably be, being a NATO airplane, and that'd be a weapon that would be integrated into NATO weapons structure. They would probably be easiest to use them on the F-16s because there's certain things about an airplane in terms of the software and all to use various different weapons and all that. However, it seems like in the last couple of days the Russians have done their best to knock out the F-16s. We don't know what the success has been. Apparently, there have been 2 attacks with their Kinzhal hypersonic missile that's launched from the MiG-31, have attacked a specific air base in Ukraine, which presumably are the ones that hold the F-16s. And so, anyway, so that's kind of the situation on that. Otherwise, the war continues. The Ukrainians are still holding out in the Kursk incursion, although latest word seems to be that their elite units are beginning to be pulled out and be replaced with territorial defense units. So and the territorial defense units then will presumably end up being sacrificed, nor they save their more elite warriors for presumably going back to the Donbass and fight the Russian offensive that's been ongoing there and making some significant gains. I don't know. Maybe they'll try to rescue the people at Olivar or whatever you pronounce it down there, which has been surrounded apparently and is under heavy attack in the last few days. So, at any rate, that's kind of the way things have been going in the war. It doesn't look like that the Ukraine victory plan is going to work out too good. And of course, he then had a meeting with Trump, which I get the feeling didn't go that well from his point of view. It's hard to know where Trump is, and that is going to be something that's going to be interesting if, in fact, Trump wins. And on the election, I would say right now, it's certainly too early. I definitely believe Trump has a clear chance of winning. But then again, depending on the way things go, we could conceivably lose too. It's a close election overall. I tend to think that there's kind of if you look at the national polling and look at the ones that even the average would suggest that Trump was probably doing better in some of the competitive states than what the state polls have said, as I mentioned in the previous video. However, I guess the other possibility of where that might not be the case would be if, in fact, Trump is actually doing stronger in the areas where the Democrats usually win than he's done historically. And then that would mean that it could slip to where it's a close toss-up in those 7 competitive states. That seems unlikely to me, though. Everything I see doesn't suggest that that like Trump's going to do better in California or New York than he did previously. But then again, that's always kind of, up in the air, I guess. So anyhow, but it doesn't look like him and Zelenskyy are probably on the same page, mainly that Zelenskyy wants a total victory, all claimed territory back. And that would mean, of course, that the areas in the Donbass and Luhansk, Oblast, and so forth would have to return. And let's face it, the people there don't want that. I mean, and they're actually what we're kind of missing in a lot of the public, let's say the mainstream media discussions of the Ukraine conflict in the U.S. is that these people from those areas are actually signing up and are actually fighting against the Ukrainian army. There's a degree to which this has always been a civil war, and not just a Russian aggression. And that's the point that's completely ignored by most of the Western commentators. The only reason why Russia got involved was because the civil war did break out, and they were coming, if you will, to try to prevent the people rebelling, the Russian ethnics, from being completely overwhelmed. And I think and they were being attacked all along. So. We can well argue that might not be justified under international law or anything like that, but we have to remember that the Minsk process was supposed to resolve this situation, but in fact, Angela Merkel claimed the whole thing was a fraud just to buy time for Ukraine. So, put it this way, both sides are kind of guilty of misbehavior in this one. So anyway, that's kind of about it for now. I'll be wrapping this one up. Of course, I'll be posting this on both YouTube and Rumble, and the addresses of my social media accounts are in the description below, and I'll try to continue to make commentary about the election campaign on the social media. And so that'll be it for now.